What if some of the most beloved TV shows of the 70s almost destroyed American television? These weren't just programs. They were cultural time bombs that shattered taboos and sparked national outrage. From shocking feminist agendas to raw depictions of racial tensions, they dared to show what others wouldn't. But which of these shows pushed the boundaries too far? And what happened when they were pulled off the air? Stay tuned, because some of these stories will blow your mind. The Ropers, 1979. When Three's Company became a breakout hit, its quirky landlords, Stanley and Helen Roper, were so beloved that it seemed inevitable they'd get their own spin-off. What followed was The Ropers, a show that failed to capture the magic of its predecessor. Despite the same characters, the spark was gone. Audiences, expecting the dynamic energy of Three's Company, found the humor stale, relying too heavily on tired gags and the disconnection between the characters. Critics were harsh, pointing out that the charm of the Ropers only worked in small doses, and when stretched to a full series, their charm quickly turned to monotony. The setting, a suburban neighborhood, lacked the electric tension of the original apartment setup, and viewers were disengaged. Without the comedic chemistry that made Three's Company so successful, The Ropers was a flop, leading to its cancellation after just one season. In an era where successful spin-offs were highly sought after, The Ropers remains a textbook case of how a spin-off can completely miss the mark, failing to replicate what made the original series special. Despite its failure, it has gained a reputation as a reminder that lightning doesn't always strike twice. Maude, 1972. Maude was a groundbreaking show that turned heads for all the right reasons, at least for some viewers. Starring B. Arthur as the fiercely feminist Maude Findlay, the show was unafraid to tackle contentious social issues, from women's rights to abortion. In fact, one of its most memorable episodes, where Maude undergoes an abortion, generated heated debates across the country. The controversial nature of the show was evident even in its premise: a middle-aged woman addressing issues of autonomy, marriage, and equality in a time when these subjects were rarely discussed on television. But despite its progressive themes, Maude faced its fair share of backlash. Conservative viewers found the show's boldness unsettling, and the portrayal of abortion was considered shocking. Yet Maude was also celebrated for its trailblazing approach to TV, giving a voice to women's perspectives that were rarely seen on the small screen. The show's ability to balance humor with serious, real-world issues marked it as one of the most daring sitcoms of the decade. Though it faced its critics, it also became an important piece of cultural commentary, reflecting the evolving social landscape of the early 70s. The Second 100 Years, 1967. The Second 100 Years was an offbeat comedy that explored the unlikely premise of a man frozen in time for 100 years, only to be thawed out in the 1960s. Starring Monty Markham as the time-displaced character and co-starring Lee Merriweather, the show tried to blend fish-out-of-water humor with a fantasy twist. But while the concept seemed whimsical and full of potential, it ultimately failed to resonate with audiences. The show's humor, often based on the clash between the old man's outdated ideas and the modern world, was repetitive and predictable. The societal commentary that could have been drawn from such a unique concept was overshadowed by formulaic plotlines and a lack of character depth. Critics argued that the show's premise quickly wore thin, with little innovation to sustain its comedic appeal. While Markham's performance was praised, it wasn't enough to make the Second 100 Years memorable. The show, though lighthearted and charming in its attempt to tackle social change and the passage of time, struggled with consistency and pacing. After just one season, the Second 100 Years was cancelled. I'm marking it as a forgotten piece of TV history. Its quick cancellation highlights the challenge of making novelty concepts stick when there isn't enough substance to support them. The Rookies, 1972. The Rookies was a police procedural drama that sought to explore the lives of three rookie officers in a large city, offering a grittier, more realistic portrayal of law enforcement than many of its contemporaries. The show quickly gained a following, thanks to its raw, unfiltered approach to depicting crime and police work. However, it was not without controversy. The Rookies pushed boundaries by depicting complex social issues such as race, corruption, and the struggles of urban life. While the show was praised for its bold storytelling and the performances of its lead actors, yet it also sparked debates about the portrayal of law enforcement and its impact on public perception. At the time, many viewers were not ready for such unflinching portrayals of the challenges officers faced, and the show struggled with its tone. Some felt it was too dark and pessimistic, while others criticized it for not providing enough of the feel-good moments often associated with police dramas. Despite these criticisms, The Rookies remained popular for its three-season run. It has since been recognized as an important precursor to the more complex and gritty cop dramas that would follow in the decades to come. The show's ability to balance action with social commentary marked it as one of the more daring police dramas of the 1970s. The Invisible Man, 1975. The Invisible Man was a sci-fi series that focused on a scientist who, after an experiment gone wrong, becomes invisible and must navigate the challenges of his new existence. The show had all the makings of an exciting sci-fi hit, blending espionage, adventure, and the classic Invisible Man concept. However, despite its innovative premise, The Invisible Man never quite found its audience. The series struggled to maintain momentum, as it was often bogged down by repetitive storylines and a lack of strong character development. While the concept of an invisible protagonist held potential for unique storytelling, the show's execution failed to capitalize on this. The lack of memorable villains or a compelling overarching narrative left many viewers unimpressed. Furthermore, the special effects, which should have been a highlight given the premise, were outdated and poorly executed for the time. Critics pointed out that the show was a mere shadow of more successful sci-fi series of the era, such as The $6 Million Man. With declining ratings and lackluster critical reception, The Invisible Man was canceled after just one season, marking it as one of the forgotten gems of 1970s television. Its failure serves as a reminder of how high-concept ideas can falter without strong writing and engaging characters. Turn On, 1971. In a world where TV was mostly predictable, Turn On was the show that dared to push every limit. Created by the same minds behind Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, the show attempted to redefine sketch comedy with its boundary-pushing humor, aiming to satirize the social norms of the time. And the problem? It was too much, too weird, too avant-garde, too sexually charged. The premiere was such a chaotic blend of surreal humor, political satire, and sexual innuendo that viewers didn't know whether to laugh or be offended. Within minutes of the first episode airing, audiences were outraged, and networks received an overwhelming amount of negative feedback. The backlash was so strong that the show was canceled before the first episode even finished. It became the ultimate example of how pushing too hard on cultural boundaries without considering the audience's readiness can lead to disaster. Turn On was ahead of its time in terms of satire and social commentary, but its inability to connect with mainstream viewers doomed it to be one of TV's most infamous failures. Its swift cancellation made it a legend in television history, a symbol of what can happen when creativity goes too far. Still, it remains a fascinating relic from a time when television dared to experiment with formats that would eventually be embraced in later decades. The Magician, 1973. The Magician was a short-lived adventure series that starred Bill Bixby as a former stage magician turned detective, solving crimes using his skills in illusion and misdirection. The concept seemed promising, blending mystery and magic, but the execution failed to capture the audience's imagination. While The Magician offered intriguing premises in each episode, the formula quickly became repetitive, and the show struggled with pacing and character development. The central gimmick of using magic to solve crimes, though creative, often felt like a one-trick pony. Audiences were left wanting more depth and emotional connection with the characters, but the series never delivered. Critics noted that while the show's premise was unique, it lacked the substance needed to keep viewers engaged week after week. The supporting cast also struggled to provide the necessary chemistry with Bixby, making the show feel disjointed. Despite a charismatic lead performance, The Magician was canceled after just one season, a victim of its inability to evolve past its initial gimmick. In an era where detective shows were evolving to include more complex narratives, The Magician never quite found its place. It remains an example of how a creative idea, without strong storytelling and character development, can fail to resonate with audiences, no matter how intriguing the premise. The Brady Bunch Hour, 1976. When the Brady Bunch wrapped up its original run in 1974, it seemed like the end of an era for the wholesome, all-American family sitcom. But then came The Brady Bunch Hour, a musical variety show that tried to take the Brady family into a completely different direction. Aired as part of the burgeoning trend of variety shows, this spin-off completely changed the familiar family dynamic, adding a musical twist that didn't sit well with audiences. The Brady kids, who had previously been cute and relatable, were now singing and dancing in ways that seemed forced and awkward. The shift from a grounded family show to a more flamboyant, over-the-top variety format alienated fans, and the chemistry that made the original show so beloved simply wasn't there. Even worse, where critics were quick to point out the show's lack of authenticity and its oddball format that didn't quite work. The Brady Bunch Hour was seen as an attempt to milk the success of the original show without understanding what made it special. The series lasted only one season before being canceled, serving as a cautionary tale for networks looking to cash in on nostalgic properties. The failed spin-off marks a moment in TV history when the line between family-friendly programming and outlandish spectacle became dangerously blurred. Joe and Mabel, 1970 July. Joe and Mabel was an attempt at a quirky comedic exploration of an unlikely duo, a widowed, disillusioned newspaper editor named Joe and his upbeat, often eccentric, assistant Mabel. Set in a fictional small-town newsroom, the series tried to capture the charm of workplace comedy while diving into the personal lives and offbeat dynamics of its characters. Despite the engaging chemistry between the lead actors, Joe and Mabel struggled to find its footing. The show often mixed broad slapstick with a supposed heartfelt undercurrent, but the emotional moments felt forced and disconnected. Critics noted that while the show tried to be both comedic and sentimental, it lacked a clear tone, often teetering between humor that felt outdated and serious, moments that didn't land with the audience. The pacing was sluggish, and the humor was too gentle for a time when more bold and innovative comedies were emerging. The lack of character development and an overarching storyline made it difficult for viewers to stay engaged. After only one season, when Joe and Mabel was canceled, its fate sealed by its failure to evolve with the changing tastes of television audiences. The show serves as an example of how mixing light humor with forced emotional depth can often result in a forgettable series. Supertrain, 1979. In 1979, NBC took one of its biggest risks with Supertrain, a high-budget drama set aboard a luxury, high-tech train traveling across the United States. With a production budget that was larger than many big-screen blockbusters, Supertrain was meant to be the crown jewel of NBC's primetime lineup. The show was advertised as a glamorous, action-packed ride, but viewers were unprepared for what came next. What was supposed to be a thrilling escape quickly became a confused, overly ambitious disaster. From laughable special effects to cheesy plot lines, the show's attempt to mix disaster drama with luxurious escapism turned out to be a colossal misfire. The train itself, which was meant to be the show's heart and soul, looked cheap and unconvincing. Rather than providing the sophistication NBC envisioned, Supertrain became a symbol of TV overreach, with its high production values failing to mask the lack of compelling characters or a coherent plot. Within weeks, it was clear the public wasn't ready for such a high-concept, flashy show. Critics and viewers quickly turned on it, and it was canceled after just one season, becoming one of TV's most infamous flops. Supertrain remains a cautionary tale about how even the most expensive TV shows can derail if they don't connect with their audience. Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp, 1971. Lancelot Link, Secret Chimp was an absurd, live-action primetime spy comedy that starred trained chimpanzees in the lead roles. Set in a world where animals secretly work as undercover agents, the show featured the title character, Lancelot Link, a suave secret agent chimpanzee, as he battled evil forces. Despite its outlandish premise and a strong cult following, Lancelot Link failed to capture a broad audience. The bizarre combination of animal actors in human costumes, slapstick humor, and over-the-top spy antics quickly became more of a curiosity than a lasting television success. The show's gimmick wore thin after a few episodes, and its attempt at campy humor didn't connect with the mainstream audiences of the time. Critics were divided, some calling it a harmless bit of fun, while others criticized its lack of substance. The novelty wore off quickly, and after just one season, the show was canceled. Lancelot Link is remembered today as an example of how oddball concepts can generate initial interest but often struggle to hold up in the long term. Despite its failure, it has since achieved a niche status in television history, demonstrating that even the strangest ideas can carve out a place in pop culture, albeit briefly. The New People, 1969. The New People was a drama series that centered around a group of young adults stranded on a tropical island after a plane crash, and it quickly became one of the most controversial failures of its time. The show's premise seemed promising, exploring themes of survival, relationships, and society building, but the execution fell flat. Instead of focusing on the gritty realities of survival, the series leaned too heavily into melodrama and idealized portrayals of the characters, many of whom were portrayed as overly perfect and unrelatable. The lack of realism and the poor development of the island's social dynamics made it difficult for audiences to connect with the characters. Additionally, the show's attempt at addressing serious social issues, such as race and generational conflict, was forced and superficial, leading to criticism that it lacked the depth needed to be meaningful. Viewers expected more emotional complexity, but The New People offered a watered-down version of what could have been a compelling social experiment. After just one season, the show was canceled due to low ratings. Despite its early demise, The New People serves as a reminder of how an ambitious premise, if not executed well, can quickly lose its impact and fade into obscurity. The Star Wars Holiday Special, 1978. The Star Wars Holiday Special was supposed to be the ultimate fan service, a one-off variety show designed to capitalize on the massive popularity of the Star Wars franchise. But what it turned into was something far more bizarre. A mix of musical numbers, absurd skits, and clumsy attempts to deepen the lore of the Star Wars universe, the special was a jarring departure from the iconic space opera. The story revolves around Chewbacca's family and their attempt to reunite for Life Day, a Wookiee holiday, while the rest of the Star Wars cast appears in increasingly strange segments. The special features everything from a cooking segment with an animated Boba Fett to a surreal and confusing appearance by a cantankerous alien named Mala. While the Star Wars franchise is known for its vast universe and quirky characters, the holiday special's outlandish antics failed to resonate with fans. Its awkward mix of slapstick comedy and sentimental moments felt out of place, and the special's poor production values only added to the dissonance. The backlash was swift and intense, with many fans cringing at the cringe-worthy attempt to cash in on Star Wars' success. The holiday special was quickly swept under the rug, and it wasn't until years later that it gained cult status as an infamous piece of Star Wars lore. For years, George Lucas himself refused to release it officially, and it has become a legend in pop culture as one of the most misunderstood and bizarre TV specials of all time. The Jerry Lewis Show, 1970. When Jerry Lewis, a comedy legend known for his slapstick humor and iconic film performances, took his over-the-top antics to television in the 1970s, it was meant to be a star-studded, high-energy talk show. However, The Jerry Lewis Show quickly became one of the most controversial and uncomfortable shows of the decade. While his humor had once charmed audiences on the big screen, his frantic, slapstick style clashed badly with the more relaxed and polished talk show formats that were becoming popular. His unpredictable behavior and erratic outbursts left both guests and viewers on edge, with many critics describing his antics as awkward and cringe-worthy. His temper and volatile interactions with the guests were widely discussed, leading to public unease about his ability to carry the show. What was supposed to be a fun, lively format ended up alienating audiences who found his energy too much to handle, particularly in a setting where casual, conversational talk shows were starting to dominate the TV landscape. His heavy-handed humor and lack of chemistry with his guests sparked debates about his relevance in the 70s, marking The Jerry Lewis Show as a flashpoint in the evolution of late-night television. The controversy surrounding his behavior, mixed with poor ratings, led to the show's swift cancellation after just one season. It remains a cultural example of how even beloved figures can face backlash when their outdated style fails to meet the expectations of a changing TV landscape. The Quest, 1976. The Quest was an ambitious adventure series set in the Old West, following two men, one a former outlaw, the other a lawman, who embark on a journey to capture a criminal and seek redemption. The series attempted to combine elements of action, drama, and moral dilemmas, but it ultimately struggled to find its footing. While the concept held promise, the show's tone was inconsistent, oscillating between action-packed sequences and deeper philosophical musings on justice and redemption. This shift in tone left many viewers uncertain of the show's direction. The characters, though intriguing, lacked sufficient depth to hold the audience's attention, and the slow pacing hampered the potential for dynamic storytelling. Despite strong performances from the lead actors, The Quest was criticized for its lack of character development and an underwhelming exploration of its core themes. The show's attempt to deal with heavy moral issues, such as forgiveness and the nature of justice, often felt disjointed and forced. The ambitious scope of the show ultimately led to its quick cancellation after just one season. Although it failed to make a lasting impact, The Quest remains a curious example of 1970s television, one that attempted to blend bold themes and action but struggled with pacing and character depth. These shows proved that the 70s were a time when TV pushed boundaries and sparked national conversations. From taboo topics like abortion and race to absurd, controversial experiments, these programs dared to be different and faced the consequences. Their legacies remind us how television in the 70s was a true reflection of a society in transition, unafraid of controversy.